stupid, but people are going to laugh. That's the you could apply that line to like 90% of my humor. It's stupid, but people are going to laugh. Hello there, heroes. I'm the Orange Ranger. I know you can't tell right now, but it is a special occasion, and, well, here we are. This is it, the final session review for Power Rangers Hyperforce, at least for the first season, fingers crossed. What a journey this has been, literally traveling through time and space, crossing dimensions of the Rangerverse, weaving this amazing tale. I knew going in that this was going to be bittersweet, even now. Let's put a ribbon on this story by taking a look at the 25th and final session of Power Rangers Hyperforce. Every ending is a new beginning. So you know how a lot of times in Power Rangers, the second to last episode will show the team using their entire arsenal, all of their weapons, all of their Zords, all of their powers and abilities and battleizers and etc. And then in the finale, all of that gets stripped away and we end up back down just to the core team in their basic form. That kind of seemed to happen here. Whereas last time we had all 6 Hyperforce Rangers, 3 guest stars, and 2 NPC allies, this time we start off with just the core Ranger team on their primary mission, trying to find Zordon. Chloe keeps hearing the voice, and now it's actually giving her directions. Go left, go right, follow this way, etc., etc. The ships have assumed a V formation, kind of odd, seeing at first they flied off in 5 different directions. And Chloe says that Zordon is in the ship all the way on the right. Alpha says that each of the ships has an escape hatch on top, and if they can sneakily fly by, the Rangers could leap into each ship. Marv says they're going to need the Black Ranger for this. I'm not entirely sure why, though. They have 5 Rangers and there are 5 ships. It's pretty easy math to me. Oh well. They have apparently been working on a new body for Vesper, but Alpha says it's not quite ready yet. The Rangers all pile into Chloe's Phoenix Zord, which is both smaller than a time ship and thus harder to detect, as well as being boosted by Chloe's own stealth. She flies it over one of the hatches and they head inside the ship. Joe tries turning them all invisible by having them join hands, but Malika says it doesn't work. They see a long hallway with a series of doors. Chloe starts listening to each door, but she's not hearing anything. She heads left and sees a door with a keypad that says, unlocked. Marv suggests that Joe turns invisible and heads inside to check the room, and Joe in turn asks Eddie and Alpha to scan the room to see if there are any traps. But when they scan the room, the door opens, and inside they see a man stuck behind a force field. The man wakes up, sees the Rangers, and then goes, Chloe? Is that Chloe? She falls into a state of shock, and he says that he's been calling out for her. He asks her if she still has the locket, and she says that she does. He says that that has been his link to her. She asks this man where her mother is, but his head drops and he admits that he watched her die. Yes, the Rangers have found Chloe's father alive. Chloe is of course heartbroken about her mother, but her father says now she can save him and everyone else. She can't figure out why she felt that her mother was alive so strongly, but says that she will get her father back to their ship. He says, no. He can help them. They've forced him to do work on this ship. He knows where Zordon is being held. I don't know if they mentioned that they were looking for Zordon, which could have been a big clue, though I suppose that he could have just wanted to tell them that information since obviously they're Power Rangers. A big clue to what? They can't find any controls for the force field, so Joe just teleports in, grabs the man, and teleports back out. Chloe hugs him, and he asks to see her face. She removes her helmet, so now she's demorphed, right, Zach? And he says that she looks just like her mother did at that age. He says that Zordon's energy would disrupt the ship's controls, so Zordon's been moved to the back of the ship. They head back that way, dodging some grunts. All of a sudden, they're notified that their ship is powering up all on its own. Chloe's dad goes, "Huh, she's about 30 seconds ahead of schedule," and throws up a force field between himself and the Rangers. Yes, this was all a trap, and he was distracting the Rangers until Scorpina could get aboard their ship. The Rangers realize that this is a trap and they need to escape. Alpha can't teleport matter from this distance for some reason, but since Vesper is data, he's able to transmit her back to the ship. But into what? The ship itself? How's that going to help? No. Into that brand new body that they've been working on. Of course, the Hyperforce Rangers have this annoying tendency to discuss their plans out loud, so Mr. Ashford overhears this and tells Scorpina to leave with the ship, and by the way, she may have an uninvited guest. Vesper arrives on the ship, and apparently they had installed that old memory chip into her new body, as suddenly all of her memories come flooding back to her, up to, including, and past her death. Obviously, this shakes her, but she pushes past it since she has a mission. She quickly figures out how her new body moves and then takes off for the control center. She finds Scorpina with someone tied up next to her. It's Wes, the red Time Force Ranger. He tells Vesper that it's a trap, but Scorpina tells him to shut up. Vesper's new body does match the DNA from her old body, so she's finally able to morph again. I guess the new body also had the morpher, but hey. She raises her arms in triumph, and Scorpina takes this chance to throw her sword at her, but she misses, just hitting some controls before the sword bounces right back. Vesper jumps at Scorpina, spins around her, grabs Scorpina's own hair and wraps it around her neck, and then pulls her back onto her knee. Ow! Scorpina uses her nails to cut off her own hair, eliminating that weakness. Vesper frees Wes and asks him how he was captured, but he just says it's a long story and something they can talk about after they defeat the crazy supervillain. Mr. Ashford says that he would really like some one-on-one time with his daughter, but he just knows the other Rangers are going to try something if he just drops the force field. So he has planned for that. 3 of the other 6 ships, I could have sworn they said there were 5, but okay, have captured Time Force Rangers on them, with his men ordered to kill them if anything happens to him. Oh, and by the way, Zordon isn't actually on any of the ships. This was a trap from the very beginning. The Rangers know that Chloe is capable of handling herself, so Marv attaches some kind of tracker watch or something to her belt, and they make plans to save the Time Force Rangers. Eddie calls Vesper to check in, but for some reason he can only receive messages that Vesper has already sent, saying that she's in battle, but now she remembers everything. Alpha locates the 3 Rangers and says that while it's usually a better idea to keep the Ranger team together, in this case they really don't have a choice and they're going to have to split up. They don't have the time to search the ships one by one. It's really one of the first times that they've actually split the team up while acknowledging that it's not a good idea to do so. They reboard the Phoenix Zord and Alpha pilots it to the first ship. Eddie volunteers to go first and says his goodbyes to the team just in case. The ship is laid out exactly the same as all the others, and he can hear a voice calling for his help. A single crony pops into the hallway, confused, and Eddie blasts him, kicking him back into the room he came out of and breaking the door. Eddie finds where the voice is coming from, but suddenly this prisoner begins talking strangely, saying, No, don't come in here. The big floaty head guy is here. And now I'm seeing things. Eddie busts in anyway and finds himself on a small tropical island. Is this the ship's simulation deck? It's lonely at first, but then a bikini-wearing Vesper struts up to him. He says that he knows this isn't real, but she just quiets him, telling him to just accept it. Eddie takes a hold of Vesper and says that he knows this is not real and throws her into the water, which helps him to realize that the water is a lot closer than it was just a few moments ago. The island is sinking. He calls out to the voice he heard earlier for help and realizes the voice is coming from the sun. So Eddie begins running towards the sun. Somehow, Jack takes his turn and is immediately met by Goldar. He hears a woman's voice demanding to be released. The voice says that this is ridiculous. She is the yellow Time Force Ranger. Jack says that he's a Time Force officer, and she says if that's true, he'll obey her and get her out of there. Jack bigs up using his +3 intimidation and activates his Krius cannon. Goldar quakes with fear as a perfect shot hits him right in the wings. Goldar's kinda sensitive about those, so he jabs back, hitting Jack in the shoulder. She really wants to get out and get some kicks in now. Jack shoots an access panel and the force field drops, letting Katie bust through the door. Jack is awed when realizing who this is. Although she already said that she was the yellow Time Force Ranger, did he not know who that was? And Katie asks him what exactly he's done to her suit. He explains that he's a Hyperforce Ranger. It's a different set of powers, don't worry about it. Goldar runs up to attack them, and Katie just punches him in the face for interrupting. In the immortal words of Linkara, that's Katie. I like Katie. Joe and Marv go to rescue the last Time Force Ranger. Marv tells Joe to proceed with caution, but in a nice switcheroo, Joe says, no, this is the time that you go in guns blazing. Joe sees purple energy coming out from under a door. They kick it in and find Doomstone trying to find and revive the spirit of Thrax. They attack him from behind, spinning him so he lands on his face. Tied up behind Doomstone is Lucas, the Time Force Blue Ranger. He's thrilled that Power Rangers have come to save him, but quickly recognizes Joe's voice and realizes just who has come to save him. You might remember that Lucas and Nadira had a bit of a thing. Well, a comedic episode of Time Force and then hinted at again in the Wild Force team-up, but still, it was something. And this means that Lucas and Joe are romantic rivals. They banter back and forth for a bit, although they both finally realize that they both care about Nadira, so that's some common ground for them. This is actually really awkward for Marv, who turns to Doomstone to sympathize with him, and Doomstone is gone. They free Lucas, so Joe stood there and had an argument with Lucas while he was sitting there tied up in a chair. Now that's something. And Joe gives him a blade blaster. Lucas says that his morpher is in the control center of the ship since they used it to unlock it. They round the corner and Doomstone pops up, running off, and the Rangers give chase with the unmorphed Lucas in the middle. However, now we're going to switch things back over to Chloe. And heroes, get yourself a big bowl of popcorn and a bigger box of Kleenex. This is some good stuff. Chloe says she doesn't understand what her dad is doing. He says that she will, and he's doing what's right. Chloe says she's not just going to accept that. She's not a little kid anymore. And he says that she's absolutely right. In fact, he's surprised that she hasn't put it together already, since she's so smart and she's come so far. He says that after he explains everything to her, he's going to ask her to join him. And he wants her to ponder the fact that he has seen the future. Chloe says yes, and together they bring balance to the Force or whatever. Chloe says, no, this is wrong. People are dying. Mr. Ashford says, yes, people are dying. That's how it should be. Chloe asks if her mother had to die. He lowers his head once again and says that her mother lost sight of the path. Chloe realizes, with horror, that her mother didn't just die. Her father killed her. He won't admit to it outrightly. He just says that he watched her fall and doesn't know where she landed, but it's pretty clear it's something he did intentionally. He says that his plan is not going perfectly. For example, Thrax died sooner than expected, and that's going to have to be fixed. But as long as the Z-Wave doesn't happen, he wins. That's the key to all of this. He sees the Z-Wave as Zordon changing history. He's not against goodness or the Power Rangers. He feels that there should be Power Rangers and other heroes. It's just that he's obsessed with balance, feeling that Zordon unfairly tilted the tables by sacrificing himself. Good and evil, in his mind, should always fight each other at 100%. Chloe can't figure out why her father, a Time Force officer that she remembers being a good man, would do all of this, but he says he was enlightened and realized that they are not the ones that should decide if good or evil wins. He then tells her that he's got a pretty big insurance policy for the Rangers' interference. Thrax released the T-Wave, Zordon is hidden somewhere, and only he knows where that is. Of course the Rangers are going to try and stop him, but right now they're rescuing the Time Force Rangers. Each one of those ships is under orders to leave this area in 10 minutes. By the way, this conversation is taking place just after the other Rangers left to go on their rescue missions, so the clock has only been ticking through this conversation. Any ship that does not leave the area will explode. Chloe tries to sacrifice her freedom for the greater good, saying she'll go with her father and nobody else needs to die. But he's unswayed by this, saying again, he's been to the future. She does join him. And that's when he drops the real bomb on her. That's why her parents left her in the first place. Against Time Force policy, the two of them traveled into the future and had a peek in on Chloe. Seeing a Chloe that went through life completely unchallenged and just drifting, never reaching her full potential. She pleads with him to stop this, saying she'll go with him. He appreciates that, but says again, this is just an insurance policy. And by the way, you're free to call your friends and tell them all about it and tell them to leave. She calls them to warn them, but they say that they have a mission and they have to see it through. After the break, we head back to Vesper versus Scorpina. Scorpina throws her sword again, Vesper flipping up to try to avoid it, but actually landing on it instead. Wes morphs and fires a couple of shots at Scorpina, hitting her a few times. Then things get really interesting. Vesper grabs Scorpina and starts dragging her to the back of the ship. Wes runs up and says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what are you doing?" Vesper says she's going to toss Scorpina out the airlock into hyperspace. Wes says, that's not a half bad idea, actually. Rito runs out of Vesper's room and bites Scorpina on the arm. She tries to roll away, but Vesper just slaps restraints on her. Scorpina accepts her fate like a warrior and just slumps, defeated. Vesper starts to feel bad about this and asks Scorpina to say something mean. Scorpina doesn't really feel like doing anything Vesper tells her to, so she just sits there and says nothing. So Wes goes bored now and hits the console, activating the airlock and sending Scorpina out into the hyperstream. Again, just like Primator, if she survives this, she could end up anywhere in time and space. Back over to Eddie, the island is still sinking, and apparently running towards the sun didn't do anything to help. Oh, wait a second, let me make sure this light bulb's okay. Oh, wait. Suddenly, Eddie remembers Zordon's wink and that sparkle on his trident. As he thinks about it, suddenly he can very clearly hear the other voice. Not that the other voice is helpful, just saying that this seems to be an illusion. Eddie swings his trident and it slashes through the illusion and hits Trip, the green Time Force Ranger. Trip's alright though, and they introduce themselves. They hear a loud roar from outside the ship and a hole is torn in it, and they see a giant floating head. No, not that giant floating head. This one has feathers. Yes, this is not Zordon, this would be Lokar. Eddie knows all about the history of Lokar and realizes that his being here probably means that everything around them is an illusion. He swings his trident around and the hole in the ship closes back up, because it was never there to begin with. The two of them start whispering, realizing that Lokar is probably listening in. Trip says that they can create their own illusions using science. Eddie programs his morpher to create the rest of his team as Hyperforce Blue Rangers. Trip follows his lead and creates an entire team of his Time Force friends as Green Rangers. Funny enough, they both created Joe together, shared between the teams in a suit that's half Time Force Silver and half Hyperforce Green. So he got to be his accurate colors, but the rest of their friends had to be their colors. Lokar roars again, and this time the entire back of the ship is sheared off, with things starting to fall out of it. Eddie is done with this illusion crap, jumping out of the ship with the intention to stab Lokar in the eyeball. Trip decides to help him by sending the holograms ahead of him so Lokar doesn't know when he actually needs to defend. He kind of screws it up though as the holograms start shrinking as they get closer to Lokar. However, this still works as Lokar begins laughing and gets distracted and Eddie slams into his head. Lokar fades back and explodes. The two of them run to the ship's command center and Trip finds his morpher. He yanks it out and the ship starts shaking and shuddering, the authorization process interrupted. This kind of goes against when the Alliance took Joe's silver morpher, used it to activate their ship, and then destroyed it, but hey. The two of them head for the escape hatch, Alpha flying the Phoenix Zord over to pick them up. Trip gets in and realizes the Phoenix Zord. He designed these Zords and gave those designs to Jen. If she saw those designs all the way through to production, Jen's okay. Over with the Yellow Rangers, Jack asks Katie if she knows where her morpher is, but she doesn't. Goldar is not telling, so Katie says that Jack can shut him up now. Jack ram rushes Goldar, knocking him flat. Katie then drops the elbow on Goldar, shooting Jack a wink as she does. Ooh, somebody seems a little taken with old 1993 Omega Gamma. Goldar's not done though, getting up and charging at Katie with his sword. But Katie catches the sword, twists it to shake Goldar off, and then crushes the sword in her hands. I did mention that I like Katie, right? Katie is just awesome. Goldar stands one more time with a bent wing and a broken sword. He's not having the best day. Jack then takes a little inspiration from Katie. He turns his weapon into hammer mode, slams it directly into Goldar's head, spins him around, and then rips off one of his wings. Despite all of this, Goldar never actually just explodes, but he falls down and it's clear that he's done. Katie gives Jack a slap on the back. High praise. The two of them realize that Katie's morpher would be in the ship's command center and they start to head there. But first, Jack is not an idiot. He's been picking up on the vibes going on here. So he says that maybe after all of this is wrapped up, some coffee. Katie says she likes coffee. Ooh, hashtag Jakatie. I ship it. I ship it FedEx overnight delivery. As the two of them board the Phoenix Zord, Eddie comments how weird it is to see two Black Rangers in the same place. No, not two Black Rangers, two black... You know what? Never mind. Even Eddie just decides to drop it. Katie hugs Trip and is glad to see that he's okay. You know, thinking about it, it's probably been even longer since any of the Time Force Rangers have seen Trip, seeing as he was Joe's handler and undercover. Joe and Marv are fighting Doomstone along with Lucas, kind of, since he's unmorphed. Marv has a plan. He's going to drill through Doomstone, grab the morpher, Joe will grab him with the whip, pull him back through, and they take off. Marv goes through Doomstone's eye, but the entire plan goes off without a hitch. Lucas morphs, Doomstone explodes, and the ship starts doing the same. They board the Phoenix Zord with everyone happy to see them, especially Trip and Joe happy to see each other. Handler and Secret Agent reunited and it feels so good. Again, not dirty. The ships all start exploding, except for the one that Chloe and Mr. Ashford are on, I guess, and the Rangers call Vesper and have her bring the time ship. But speaking of Chloe, let's get back to her, shall we? She can't understand why her mother would break away from following her father. He says that she lost faith in the mission and actually tried to stop him. Chloe asks once again if he killed her, and he says it's not that simple. She starts walking towards her father, the wrath of the wind forming around her, and asks him again if he killed her. He said that the plan had to be protected. Chloe says her mother loved him and would have done anything for him. He agrees and says she did. She died so their plan could be safe, and that's something Chloe will understand in time. Chloe asks the obvious question at this point. What happens if she does decide to join her father, but then disagrees with something that he does? Does she suddenly end up accidentally tripping out an airlock? The wind, obviously representing Chloe's rage, even begins ripping off pieces of the ship and flinging them at the force field between them. He asks her to calm down and says that he's not going to force her to come along. It's her decision. For some reason, this does actually calm her down, ending the wind. He says that now they can start to communicate and rebuild their relationship. Chloe wants to hate her father for killing her mother. However, her instincts have not changed. She feels now more than ever that her mother actually is still alive. Of course, her father intended to kill her mother, so that's really kind of the same thing. But anyway, then she notices something else. Chloe, who started out as a thief with a heart of gold, developed a nervous tic whenever she lied. She was told that it was a family trait, and sure enough, she sees her father doing it now. Mr. Ashford is lying to her about something. She says that he needs to be completely honest with her. He is caught now and says that he will be honest about one thing. He can't wait for their next conversation, and he teleports away. Chloe punches the force field in frustration, and an electric shock demorphs her and knocks her out as explosions start going off on that ship. The Rangers reboard the ship that Chloe was on, and Marv uses a healing charge to wake Chloe up. She says that they have to chase her dad, but Alpha says that every ship that isn't exploding has already jumped into the time stream. They're gone. They all evacuate to the Hyperforce time ship. Chloe starts telling everyone what happened, though for some reason she doesn't want to talk to Wes. Wes already knew the stuff about Thrax anyway, and that the man Chloe saw, her father, is the Alliance's true leader. The Rangers come to a chilling conclusion. The Alliance has succeeded. They've won. Zordon is gone and history has been changed. They see the records in the ship starting to change. In a panic, they think about those that they left back at the dinner party. Marv calls Andros, but doesn't get an answer. Eddie calls Aisha, and she does respond. She says that they handled the situation on the moon, but the Hyperforce Rangers report their failure to recover Zordon. Aisha begs them to take her back to her time so she can warn Zordon and he can be properly prepared for all of this. No, Aisha, going back further in time to fix something that's messed up, that is not how Time Force operates. And funny enough, that is exactly the case right now, because there are Time Force Rangers on the scene and they have their rules. Funny enough, it's Wes, the only one of them, we don't see Eric at any point for the record, who isn't a Time Force officer, that says that anyone who's been removed from their time is going to need to have their memories erased. By the way, the rest of this team fought having their memories erased because of time travel and won, so hey. They bring the Allies back, except for Andros, who seems to have vanished. Jem and Lena beg not to have their memories wiped. I mean, Jem is from a completely different dimension with a different timeline. And Lena is just from one version of the future now. Her timeline may not even exist anymore. But Wes is unswayed and orders the memory wiping to be done, the two of them placed in stasis. When Vesper hears that Time Force has the ability to wipe memories, wouldn't this be something that they were educated on at the Academy? She begs them to erase the memory of her death. You see, Vesper remembers dying, a prolonged, painful frying of a death. But actually, it's more that Vesper remembers what death was like, peaceful and quiet, as opposed to the agony of her death. Wes says that he can't do that, not because those are legitimate memories from her own timeline, but because she has an android brain and he's not sure the procedure would work. Okay. So Vesper goes to Eddie and asks him to erase any backups of her that are still in the ship's memory. If she dies again, she says she can't go through this a second time. She feels like she left a piece of her soul in her other body. Even as Eddie says, she's still the same person, at least to them. Marv rallies the troops. They are still the Hyperforce Power Rangers, and they still have a mission to save all of time. Trip agrees, saying that from what he can tell, the damage to the timeline occurs about 8 months before the Z-Wave. So, and this is kind of complicated to be honest, if they can get Zordon back, take him back to where he's supposed to be, and set things as close to right as they possibly can, the timeline may just be able to stitch itself back together because of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Alright, let's get started before my headache gets any worse.
They drop Merlin, Aisha, and Jem back into their own times. They get back to 20 whatever it was and realize Lena's gone. So has she disappeared from time? Wes says no, that Lena's timeline has synced with theirs, so even if her timeline did disappear, she'd have just moved into their timeline.
Big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
So she just slipped away with her memories intact? That's Wes's theory. Jack suddenly gets a bad feeling and the Rangers decide that they should head home. They reunite with each other on the trip, but Chloe feels isolated. It's her own father that's responsible for all this. Nobody else can relate to that. So she leaves the room. Alpha lands the ship at Time Force headquarters. Or at least the place where it's supposed to be. Because it's gone. In its place, they see 3 giant statues. Rita Repulsa, Lord Zed, and Thrax. The Rangers realize that they've failed. Completely and totally. Welcome to the darkest timeline, kids. Then a bullet strikes the ship, and the Rangers see a human woman in black leather and braided hair, which is a familiar look for her. She demands to know who they are. Wes tells the woman that she already knows who they are. I mean, come on, Jen. It's us, the Time Force. Jen says, "What's Time Force?"
What's a Power Ranger?
Alpha runs out to Jen, but Jen doesn't recognize him either. They tell her that she sent them on a mission, one that they've failed, but she has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They sound crazy to her, but they look strong. Her resistance is looking for fighters that can help them fight the forces of evil. Wes speaks to Jen privately for a moment, and the other Time Force Rangers realize what they have to do. Yes, the Time Force Rangers have decided to stay in this timeline and help the Resistance, while the Hyperforce Rangers will go back into time, try to find Zordon, and fix all of this. Joe warns the Time Force Rangers that the changes the Hyperforce Rangers make in history may mean that they won't even remember any of this. Marv tosses Wes a communicator, despite Joe just pointing out how useless that might end up being. Lucas asks Jen if there's a Nadira in this timeline. She says, "Oh, what? You don't know about Her Royal Majesty, Lady Nadira? Oh, buddy, trust me. Join up with us, and we are going to take that evil pink-haired witch down." Feeling like Lucas might be a little bit conflicted here. Jack asks Chloe, who apparently returned to see the Hyperforce Rangers off, if she feels like she's up to this. She says that she does, and the other Rangers say they're going to need her help. Jen says that some patrols are going to be coming soon, so the Hyperforce Rangers better leave or join up with the Resistance. Chloe tells Jen, "You look better in pink," getting a weird look from her. Katie gives Jack a kiss on the cheek, leading Marv to say that he got cheek zoned. Marv then gets punched in the chest zoned. Marv and Wes share a handshake, and the Hyperforce Rangers take off. After Melissa thanked everyone for such an amazing journey and announced 2 brand new Hyperforce shirts, one of which I'm wearing right now, we get a short after credits scene. Zed and Rita teleported away after the T-Wave, and we see them arrive back at their moon base. Rita is furious after learning, somehow, that she's turned good in the future of that alternate timeline, as well as Zed. They are both committed to making sure that never happens. And that's it. that is the end of Power Rangers Hyperforce, at least for the first season, and as of yet, there are no official plans for a season 2. Like I've said in the past couple of sessions, Hyper RPG and Saban Brands were working on it, and then Power Rangers went over to Hasbro, and now Hyper RPG and Hasbro are working on it, but we still don't know anything official. The most positive recent sign I think I can say is that the Hyperforce cast either is or did, depending on when this video airs, a signing at San Diego Comic-Con, the first Power Rangers convention presence under the greater Hasbro banner. So I do think that's a pretty positive acknowledgement and sign. But we're still in wait-and-see mode. I will at some point do a summary video of Hyperforce's hopefully first season, but right now I'm just going to focus on this particular session. Surprise, surprise, it was amazing. It was well structured, the chase for Zordon, the search for the Time Force Rangers, and the best part of this episode, Chloe's interaction with her father, who was played by Zach, by the way. Seriously, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Christina, and Yoshi, are already actors. But the other two, Andre and Megan, have really surprised as far as acting chops throughout this season, and it goes double for Megan. No offense to Andre, just wow. She had confusion, rage, loneliness, bitterness, sadness, and she just ran through this gamut of emotions, and Megan just handled them all excellently. She really was the star of this session, and overall, the story was just great as it wound us through this entire experience from one point to the next. Yes, it leaves us with a sequel hook that if we don't get follow-up on, won't only be tragic for the Rangers, but maddening for the audience. But if you think about it, they really had to do it this way. It would be far too easy to just end the series if the story wrapped up neatly. Well, gee, I wonder if this session got a 5. Oh, look, it did. Every ending is a new beginning. Gets a 5 out of 5. Well, there's not going to be a next time on Hyperforce, at least for a while. But there is a next time on Hyperforce Reviews. I mentioned this just a moment ago, but Hyperforce is a series that definitely deserves a retrospective. I'm not sure when I'm going to do that video because I'd really like to focus on the comic videos after this, but we need to examine each of these characters, take a look at the overall story, and of course, speculate on where it can go from here. That is, however, going to do it for the very last Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching and following me through this kind of weird, interesting journey. I followed this story from this first announcement of some kind of tabletop RPG for Power Rangers that was going to be streamed on Twitch by this group, Hyper RPG, who I'd heard a little bit about but didn't really know anything about, and then details about the season being based on Time Force and having Black Nerd Comedy and a current Power Ranger, and just going through to deciding suddenly to add this to my review series, having it fall as far behind as it has. The show has been over for months now. You guys have stuck with me, have asked me about these reviews, and again, even though I really want people to watch the official product, some of you have even told me that you are following the story of Hyperforce strictly through my reviews, and I appreciate that more than I can possibly say, so thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for being so patient as I finally got through all 25 sessions of this, and I hope that I was able to do some amount of justice to the incredible story that Hyper RPG told. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of this session and my review of it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to see all of my videos, and make sure you ring that bell, get your notifications all set up so you get notified of whenever I post brand new videos, my reviews, since Hyperforce reviews aren't really going to be a thing anymore, and other videos that I make. And if you happen to really enjoy my content and want to toss me a little financial support, throw a little tip change into my jar over at digitaltipjar.com/orangerangervid, and I greatly appreciate anything that lands in there. Until the retrospective, my heroes, may the power protect you, and go Hyperforce. Whereas last time we had all 6 of the Hyperforce Rangers, she raises her arm and Goldar's not done though. Chloe, having started out as she says a bullet then strikes the ship, and the Lucas asks Jen if there's a Nadira in this universe. Zed and Rita teleported away right after the Z-Wave. She had confusion, rage, betrayal, loneliness, sadness. Chloe runs through this gamut of emotions, and Megan